I know I released a video just a few days ago, but I really wanted to talk about this Liz Hayes interview with Pete Evans on 60 Minutes from Sunday night. Obviously, as somebody who doesn't really respect the program, nor Pete Evans, it's actually quite fascinating to see how very little they do to try and debunk what he says. They're trying to make him look like an idiot, as it were, which personally, as somebody who doesn't respect anybody in this video except for the guy who works at the University of Bristol, I'm gonna go through the video as if it was just a regular video, but also there's just a lot here I don't appreciate. And I'm going to talk about why that is the case and why journalism in Australia doesn't really do the job that they're meant to set out to do. Obviously, there's a few people who think that 60 Minutes in itself is a bit more of a pop sci or just a little bit of a taste of what journalism used to be, considering that they had a very good groundwork of about 30 years of amazing journalism. It's kind of sad to see that it's gone this way, that it's more of a weird puff piece to point out that these people just are wrong constantly, but not really saying why they're wrong. Another obviously unfortunate fact is that Pete Evans released the unedited footage of his interview with Liz Hayes before the actual episode aired. It's 90 minutes long. He turned off the comments, which is weird for somebody who's, you know, skeptical and open-minded, but I'm not gonna go through that footage because, look, I think that that's gonna be more of a waste of time, and I don't wanna do that to you. So here we go. The segment's called Mad as Hell, which for people who don't know is a direct quote from a film called Network, which is about the degradation of television for the sake of spectacle and not truth. A lot of layers of irony here that I think are lost on some people. Anyway, let's enjoy.
Angry people who are convinced coronavirus is nothing more than a sinister plot to control their lives. But what do these conspiracy theorists know that we don't?
Nothing. And you would hope that that's what this segment is about if you're a rational person. That they would talk to both sides, have people debunk some of the conspiracy theories, and obviously have some questions that are raised with the interviewees about whether or not either side could be correct about this, and actually to have more fact than opinion.
Why are so many people listening to them?
If there's two things that are important in life, it's truth and it's freedom.
I think water's pretty dope. I don't think water is either truth nor freedom, but no, that's cool. Let's keep going.
COVID-19 has created a perfect storm for conspiracy theorists.
It's all a mind game.
Around the world, we're seeing them become more vocal and more extreme.
What if all you ever knew was a lie?
I'm actually quite amazed by the amount of stock footage they've used in here, as well as footage from conspiracy videos that I've seen on Facebook and YouTube. I'm concerned that they didn't get the license to use this, not the stock footage, just the YouTube footage. But more importantly, if one of those YouTube creators tries to do a copyright claim on this video, and then the video gets taken, anyway, it's a copyright's weird, as we learned very quickly last month.
Information, and we want the truth. The truth doesn't change.
Why have we seen this?
I do think a lot of COVID conspiracy people, they were told that Santa wasn't real when they were young, and that just burrowed deep into their brain the more and more that they were lied to by their parents, and then this is what it manifests. Like I was told Santa wasn't really like 6, and I was pretty upset about that. But you know what, at least we still have the Tooth Fairy, and that's just a great thing that we get to live with on a daily basis.
Why have we seen this uprising, do you think? People who may never have decided to go public with their views are doing that. Why is that?
I don't think Liz Hayes knows how the internet works and how like Web 2.0 kind of democratized that voice. The difference now is that a lot of conspiracy theorists just know how to use Adobe After Effects. Like can't we just agree that like the visuals and the graphics have just gotten like 10 times better since, what was that 9/11 conspiracy? What was that? Zeitgeist. Since Zeitgeist came out, just people have gotten real good at just managing layers in Photoshop. Like I think they don't talk about that in this video, but let's keep going.
Because some things just don't make sense with this. Some things just don't add up.
Is it like how you have, had a career, Pete? Isn't it weird that celebrity chef is a thing? How come that's not explained? I want that to be a 60-minute segment. Why we think an entire medium devoted to taste and smell somehow works for a visual medium. It's weird. Makes me upset and hungry.
From 5G towers and vaccines spreading coronavirus to suspicions the virus was unleashed deliberately by Bill Gates.
I think it's crazy that Bill Gates has enough money to buy like 60 islands and just drink himself to death and get filleted by any number of women he wants in the entire world. But he chooses to release a deadly virus on the planet. Sorry, I like the fact that they're always searching for logic and truth, and there are so many other factors that they don't sort of take into account, and it's just, look, it's fun. It's fun. It's fun. It's fun to talk about conspiracy theories, everybody.
Or that a cabal of elites are intent on taking over the world. For most of us, their idea...
Did they just use an image of Harold? Like a Harold, like this? Aw, man, poor guy doesn't need to get lumped into this bullshit. He's just trying to live his best life as a stock image, you fuckers. I like that sign in the background that says 5G for kids, no. As if it's like, yeah, hey, 5G's fine for adult, but if any kids try to use it, such as on the new Samsung S10, oh no, just no. These people have like written these signs and not thought about their intent. I also like plandemic is just, that is also another thing that I've seen pop up a lot, and especially under the hashtag plandemic is like a lot of QAnon conspiracy, which is a whole other thing, which they don't really go into this video, and I kind of wish the 60 Minutes did, because there's a lot of QAnon people in the 5G COVID conspiracy kind of groups. Oh, they are not making this better by explaining so little.
It's the level of lies I believe we're being told. Just seeing the way that this thing has unfolded and the motives of the government and what they're telling everyone to do, it seems more about control than preventing the spread of a virus.
Okay, so with any, I don't have time to get into this, but with any spread of any virus, and again, to clarify, I don't have any medical science background, no science background or anything, but there are certain parts of COVID that are different from most of the viruses. It is about the spreadability, it is about how dangerous it is to people, especially the most vulnerable people in society. It does require a level of control from governments, a small amount, but still a level regardless. This happens with every kind of major pandemic. We're just told things. There is still a level of autonomy and humility that you as a human being need to put out there, that you need to do. And for anybody who's like saying that they're forcing you to do that, yes, there are certain things that are in place. There are like cops that can fine you. There are obviously state legislation, but at the end of the day, you still have the autonomy on whether or not you do this. In the same way that the anti-vax movement has had a rise because a lot of people are choosing not to vaccinate their kids. So I'm still wondering what they think control is. Like, is control to them like laws that are in place? Because you don't have to abide by them. Like, you just have to be aware of them so you don't do the wrong thing. It's just, again, the segment doesn't really provide too many answers, but I'm sure you can make your own conclusions, which is what the conspiracies are about.
To ask questions and have them answered because things don't make sense.
At a protest a month ago, he took centre stage before being arrested. A dramatic introduction to his new role as a leader of the anti-lockdown movement.
I'm just some dude from Epping, to be honest.
Look, there is a level of charm and kindness with this dude, and I get why he has a Facebook group of over 60,000 people. He seems pretty chill and pretty nice, and maybe he kind of got swept up into this stuff because once you have an audience, once you have a voice, it's so much easier to like relax and to tell people what you think, because you think that those people are there to hear what you have to say. And I can tell you, with someone who has a very small audience, most of the time they don't care. But if you have that big an audience, it's kind of nice. I'm sure he's not going to say anything odd or dangerous.
So, what happened? How did you find yourself in this position?
When I felt that what's going on wasn't totally above board, where I believed the world is moving towards, I became concerned.
For what?
One thing I love about any kind of conspiracy theory, I guess people, it's hard to call them people, anytime that they talk about this kind of stuff, they're always incredibly vague, and it's very frustrating because you could at least reason with them if they were like, look, I don't appreciate draconian laws being put in place. I don't appreciate the way that we are subject as a society to certain types of advertising. Like, I hate billboards, but I'm also aware that as somebody who's worked in advertising, how billboards work. That if you destroy a billboard, the company that had that probably had insurance, and therefore they're probably just going to make another billboard. Again, there are people who have a lot of questions, but not a lot of answers or solutions. And they just keep kind of asking questions until their worldview kind of fits with the way that they already see the world. And it's kind of, again, it's very frustrating, and I'm pretty sure that'll happen a lot in this video where, again, we'll have a lot of questions, but not a lot of answers.
Look, I've always known and believed there are certain controlling interests in the world that are looking towards a one-world government one world currency, and that's a good thing as long as the people at the top have the people's best interests in mind. Because if they don't have the common man's interests in mind, then that's a very dangerous thing.
So, I don't want to talk about the anti-Semitic nature of what he's describing, because I don't think he's intentionally being anti-Semitic, or he's dog whistling, or he's referencing that stuff. The whole idea of a one world order, or the idea of like those conspiracies about one world currency and stuff like that, they've existed for decades. I remember the first time I heard of it was a joke in an Adult Swim cartoon called Harvey Birdman.
Just a few multinational corporations that own everything.
Myron.
The bear's a threat to the new world order, Birdman. Soon there will be one worldwide currency. I'll make you fun size.
One currency?
Here's your tab. Oh, right. €1, €2.
I don't think that these people are intentionally, maybe some of them are intentionally thinking that it will happen, and that's obviously not going to happen because they fight against it. But also the fact that, like, if they're worried about authoritarian rule, if they're worried about dictatorships, if they're worried about a wider problem about having a one world government is in one where we can't have our say and stuff like that, then dude, you don't live in that right now. You have a voice. You're allowed to have that. And in fact, most countries that try to pull dictator shit usually get shut down by the people. You could use this time and energy to fight against a government which right now isn't doing that great and is like a weak authoritarianism. It's fine to talk about this stuff, again, vaguely, but also you have to remember that there's like a long history of people being like really shitty towards Jewish people because they're worried that they're gonna take over the world. When you say one global currency or one global government, that there are ties to people who have said shittier and worse things.
Just 2 months ago, Fennis gave up his job training security guards to set up an online group that now has 60,000 members.
Hey guys, how you going?
And he speaks to them from his lounge room about his fears for the world.
We're the people, mate. If we don't want the vaccine, we're the people, not you. You don't make the decisions for us.
Now, while personally I appreciate 60 Minutes use of editing here, I think it's a little bit dubious to go from him very calmly in a darkened room with a ring light, which, look, sometimes you can't get the lighting right or the way that you want things when you shoot a video in your lounge room, but I think it's kind of cruel to go from that, where he's clearly doing a Facebook Live video and he's very calm, to him shouting in his bedroom. Like, there's a dissonance, I think, that as a content creator and an editor, you'd be like, hey, don't do that. But it's also like a little bit disingenuous. I think what he's saying is ridiculous and I don't agree with him. But in terms of just like, I guess just showing, just kind of skipping forward, you're like, okay, you're a calm man, blah, 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 blah. Let's get all the crazy shit.
You see this thing here? This thing here is called a television. Television.
Believing mainstream media is part of the Great Deception, Fennis encouraged his supporters to make a show-stopping statement.
No longer will we be programmed.
He showed them how.
Oh, this is like some high school fucking poetry. I'm 14, this is deep shit. But like, you're also using the Ozzy Osbourne in the background is like, I don't know, it's not great. I nearly thought she just said Thanos.
A vision.
Tells us what to do. It's a television.
And many followed.
Oh, okay, all right, okay. Look, I don't have a lot of money, and the TV that I own is about 5 years old. I won it in a contest from SBS, and I always get upset when I see people destroying expensive things, especially TVs, because I know that the TV that I own back in the day cost about $1,000. And seeing, I mean, I know TVs are cheaper now, but I use my TV for too much to destroy it. But also to do this, like there's a level of logic that isn't being put together, that your TV isn't the one responsible for pushing out mainstream issues. You should be more upset about advertisers and the people who own those companies because they are the ones who are sharing that vision. You would be much better protesting, say, Gina Reinhart or the Murdoch Press, or like there are so many other people you could be more upset at instead of the very, very poor Chinese and Korean kids who have built your television. You are wasting their talent. It's real upsetting watching all of this footage because it's like they don't get, one, how TVs work, but two, how the media works. And also the fact that they would put their stuff on the internet as like a whole other thing that I'm not gonna go into. Like that the internet has a bigger audience, but you're mad at TV, which is dying, but then also you appear on again, I'm sure they'll go into it.
What that was a protest against the overwhelming lies that the media has been pouring.
Well, it won't light, but you get the picture.
I love that at no point did this guy was like, nah, I'll shoot it again. Like, I know I'm lazy when it comes to putting these videos together where I'm like, I'll leave that in, fuck it, or I won't re-record something that I said wrong. But it's real funny that he still recorded that and put it on the internet and was like, yeah, that'll get my point across. Yeah, I'll you know, I'm gonna save this for the little bonfire I'm gonna have on Friday.
A protest against mainstream media.
Yeah.
And here we are.
Yeah, I know.
He's really confident and cocksure. And I don't know if it's the suit, because the suit makes him look real professional. As someone who only owns very, very professional clothes for funerals and for job interviews, as you can tell, there's just like, he's like a reverse Tony Stark.
Why?
I said to myself, look, at the end of the day, if the media want to paint you as something, they're going to paint you as it anyway. So you might as well at least have a voice and just come on and just be you.
I don't appreciate Liz Hayes' condescension, because it's very much like the smugness of mainstream media in general. It doesn't help you make your point. It doesn't help him make his point. It just comes off as real smug and shitty. Like I'm trying not to be a voice of authority here. This is just my opinion on this ridiculous segment, and the fact that there should have been a lot more research, and also the fact that Pete Evans released all of his unedited footage because he was going to do the exact same thing that Alex Jones does. Whenever Alex Jones is like, well, I mean, he's not interviewed anymore, but whenever he was interviewed in like a big, like a televised thing for like NBC or Fox or anything like that, he would usually leak the footage beforehand. He's like, I'm gonna tell my side of the story. And it's like, well, yeah, dude, but like, you're just telling the people who already agree with you what they already think. Like, you're not presenting both sides. Well,
we all know that a war is going on right now, and it's not just a COVID biological war. It's a war about ownership over your body and your mind.
Oh, it's about biological warfare. Oh, I would love to know how many of these people are pro-choice and pro-life. I like that is one huge argument that's come up with the 5G COVID thing. And then now I'm getting smug. Sorry, it's funny to me. It's funny to me. It's funny. I mean, the debate isn't funny, but the fact that like these people probably haven't considered what they're saying is very funny.
Whenever there's an event, a global event or even a local event that makes people feel that they have lost control over their lives or their future, that is when conspiracy theories emerge. Pandemics have been giving rise to conspiracy theories for centuries.
Professor Stefan Lewandowski is a cognitive scientist. He studies the way people think and why they engage in conspiracy theory.
Now, I'm not going to put in all of Dr. Lewandowski's portion here. You should just watch the clip, or maybe you should just read what he has said about conspiracies. There should have been so much more time debunking what these conspiracy theorists are saying, rather than making them look stupid. Because even though you think they might look stupid, they look very convincing to the right people. And it's very, very depressing that 60 Minutes didn't think about this. And I know I'm wasting the time that Dr. Lewandowski goes into to talk about conspiracy theorists and why they enjoy these things, but I use that tiny clip there because that is the summary of what is happening here.
So it can't have happened unless somebody or something bad was behind it.
Basically, some people find it much easier to explain big traumatic events by postulating a big, really evil cause for that.
This to me is the life. Is this how you would like it to be?
Barefoot, hearing the ocean, having a surf. I mean, this is what it's about. And it doesn't mean we can't be serious at times. I've been known to be serious occasionally.
The weird thing about this intro and for Pete Evans is it's not meant to discredit him at all. But we also have to remember that Pete Evans has had like at least a good amount of media training for him to look good. He knows how to look good. Not necessarily sound good, because any other interview I've seen with Pete Evans or any just other video of him, he's not exactly credible, or he's not intelligent when he speaks. Like, there's a lack of believability. Like, it's a new type of performance. Like, he's just trying to get something else out there. Like, it's a new product or a new promo or a new kind of recipe that he's created. Except the recipe is a bunch of conspiracy theories that he's concocted.
And complicated.
She's like complicated?
Occasionally.
And complicated.
It's good to know that Liz Hayes has several years of 60 Minutes under her belt as a journalist.
For a long time now, celebrity chef Pete Evans has straddled two very different worlds.
G'day everyone, afternoon update. We have some new podcasts for you.
To the more than 1.5 million people who follow him on social media, he's Paleo Pete.
You just replace the buns with mushrooms.
Promoting a diet of low carbs.
What's the breathwork called?
Served with a side dish of what he calls expanded consciousness.
Now, when most people talk about expanded consciousness, they're usually like really into psychedelics. I'm not somebody who has ever used or tried psychedelics. I've got a few friends who have, and they seem to be very well-rounded people. They have an understanding that if you have a platform of over 100,000 or 500,000 or even 1 million people, that you should probably use that platform to not spread a bunch of bullshit.
With a dollop of conspiracy. Are you a skeptic?
It's a good question, am I a skeptic? Because I have a very healthy skepticism about everything.
The best Bondi Hipsters character is Pete Evans.
Or are you deeply suspicious?
Oh, that's a good one too. I am skeptical, and I also am suspicious.
There's just a lot here in like Pete's reaction, and we won't go into the full interview, obviously, because it's long and I don't want to waste your time any more than I already have here, but there's so much of him just trying to make himself look likable and presentable that he doesn't really get into the nitty-gritty of what he actually thinks about these conspiracy theories, which also makes it look like he's just clawing for attention more than anything else. Like he's somebody who doesn't necessarily believe in what he's saying because he's more convinced about what he wants to sell and do. Like it's just a general thing that right-wing grifters do. Not to say that Pete is right-wing, I'm just saying that grifters in general have a way of speaking and getting people into a mindset that makes them more believable. And I think that Pete does that with this kind of very faux bullshit version of humility. Like him just going, I'm just, it's great. Like just the amount of like vocal inflections and like just little head nods and stuff like that. He looks like a little happy little jokester who's just like here to like not ruin your day with a bunch of terrible ideas on how to cure a disease that doesn't have any kind of like end game at the moment. And so it's just it's an interesting thing to see and to look out for.
Because history has shown us that, I mean, even science, and you know this as a fact, science has been bought by vested interests in so many different fields over the years.
Okay, so to break down what he's just said, he was saying that in history, and then he stops himself to then go into a small sentence about science. So I've written it all here. He doesn't finish this sentence just so he can finish this sentence about the fact that science has vested interests, which is what he wants to talk about. But also he's somebody who's like are you trying to make a point about the history of science? Are you trying, like he's got the same vocal inflections and the same problem that Donald Trump has during a speech. If you ask him a direct question, he will try to deflect to a completely different point altogether rather than making the point he needs to. Debatists and people who speak publicly for a living do it all the time. Rather than making a sound point or just having a good knowledge of what they're talking about, they just make just sort of a general statement or just trying to turn the conversation on what they actually want to talk about. Very shitty people do it in conversations all the time. I know, because I did that for several years. That was my entire uni experience where it's like, look, that sounds like a terrible thing that's happening in Uganda. Let me tell you about this great film by Edgar Wright that has nothing to do with what you're talking about. And Pete Evans has done the exact same thing here in this interview with Liz Hayes.
With controversial views on everything from sunscreens to dietary advice.
To immerse yourself in a healing modality or healing tool.
Most recently, he copped a large fine for spruiking a $15,000 biocharger lamp.
It's programmed with about 1,000 different recipes. There's a couple on there for Wuhan coronavirus.
Now here's the thing about them talking about controversial statements. I think it's fine to call them controversial, but it's more importantly to call them wrong or to have a scientist or to have other people who can refute those claims. There is one show in Australia called Media Watch that does that very well. They've done it for several decades at this point. Shows like 60 Minutes more boost those ideas, those controversial ideas, rather than taking the time to talk to people who know emphatically that this person is wrong. I think that there is possibly some kind of issue in regards to legalese to say that someone's wrong, that it could be a form of defamation, which we have a weird relationship with in this country. So therefore they just kind of like, just gently touch the line rather than outright calling them or dismissing the claims that they're making. And it's quite frustrating. We have a huge problem with this in Australia, where even a lot of right-wing grifters will be brought out to this country to do full tours in this country. And while they might not be attended quite well, and sadly attended by other people who agree with them, or possibly are media personalities, that there is a wider issue in this country where we do have people who have controversial ideas, but rather than taking the time to refute that, or to at least have a proper discussion with them and show how wrong they are, we just boost their ideas, which is equally dangerous, and even more so when you have a program and a platform like 60 Minutes.
Social media pages have also given exposure to some of the more bizarre theories surrounding the virus.
Now here's the thing here is that they've just shown an image from The Great Awakening, which is a QAnon conspiracy, which would have been a lot easier to talk about and a lot easier to have a discussion about on a show like 60 Minutes. You have the time and you have the format to do that. I've seen amazing videos from these people talking directly about QAnon and why they're dangerous. Also why they have political ties, including our own Prime Minister who has a friend who is a part of QAnon. Like, this would have been better to talk about rather than interviewing Pete Evans. Like, just debunking this bullshit. Like, just talking about this would have been a much better use of people's times, to be aware that there are dangerous conspiracy theorists who are out there who heavily believe that there's a guy called Q who's a part of the American government, and he secretly releases codes to tell people to do stuff. That's kind of a bad summary of what that conspiracy theory is about, but the fact that it's blossomed into this horrible, gigantic thing that is somehow includes Bill and Melinda Gates is insane. It is genuinely insane.
You posted, for example, a shot of Bill Gates.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, do you think he is part of a conspiracy?
I don't know. And I don't know.
You put that up on your Facebook, for example, and why do you do that if you don't buy into it a bit?
Because what Bill is suggesting, and every single interview that he has done recently, is suggesting that the world will not become safe until every single person on the planet has been vaccinated for this.
But what makes you think he can force that, even if you thought that?
Because he seems to be having a lot of influence with certain areas.
Just like you, Pete.
I don't have the ability to...
There's just so many odd things here about the way that Pete is answering this question for a range of reasons. One, Liz does a great point about pointing out the fact that Bill Gates doesn't have the power to make everybody vaccinated. He just has a lot of money and influence, much like Pete does. But the weird thing is that the fact that he's not willing to say whether or not he believes something, the weird thing about Pete admitting that he does or does not believe this kind of stuff just leaves those goalposts even wider for him to just say more crazy shit later on. The fact that he does or doesn't believe in this and that he doesn't know, it should discredit him, but it actually just shows that he's more open-minded to the people who already follow him. He's intentionally posting and putting these things up to grow his influence and to make sure it reaches more people. He might not believe certain things in these posts, but he might believe some of it, and that is enough of a reason for him to post it because he knows other people are going to talk about it. He knows that he will increase his followers. He knows that he will increase his fan base for whatever he needs to do down the track. Yes, he has been fined for basically frauding people into trying to get his weird magical Willy Wonka machine to cure COVID. I think that's what that was meant to be about. But the fact that they brush over it so quickly and not any of the other bullshit that he's peddled is quite telling about the fact that 60 Minutes is just doing a really soft interview with Pete on this one.
Just like you, Pete.
I don't have the ability to put something into your body. So the comparison between me...
I'm not sure Bill Gates can put it into your body either, just quietly.
I don't know. I don't know. Is the World Health Organization the one that does that? Is it the governments? Is it...
He keeps, like, it's so weird that he keeps defaulting to what I call the celebrity chef smile. Like, it doesn't matter what he's trying to say or do. He just defaults to this, like, I'm so serious. I'm so very, very serious. But then he just has, like, just this little... Like, it's people, because I've watched people shoot TV shows, and it's like, it's this weird thing that you see with like actors and celebrities and anybody who's ever been on a panel show, where they'll go from like, it's like a countdown in their head that ties with them pressing record on a camera. It's like 3, 2, 1, and then smile. Like it's just that same countdown that we're seeing here with Pete as well, where it's like he'll say something serious and then he'll go right back into smile.
I don't know. Is the World Health Organization the one that does that? Is it the governments? Is it... Could be a great story for you to look at.
Yes, Pete, it would be, but they don't. They'd rather spend time with you, buddy. They'd rather spend you and your time because, you know, they they're aware of your influence, and they're aware that you're a co-conspirator to all this. I also really wanted to make a point about the fact that I did watch the full interview. It was actually like a 23 minute segment. And they do talk to the professor from Bristol again, as well as this wonderful doctor working for the Australian Medical Association. And it's heartbreaking because of what she says about the fact that doctors now have a new job to take care of these conspiracy theories, and they're not exactly trained for it. Nor is anybody in the media, nor is anybody else in the government trained to take on these conspiracy theories. It's very depressing that this problem has gotten so out of hand, and that, yeah, 60 Minutes didn't do an amazing job, but I guess it's great that more people are aware of these problems, but then again, they didn't do a great deal with debunking it. It's great to be aware of this stuff, but to not have anything to counterbalance it outside of these two medical and psychological professionals talking about it, it would have been so much better to have a longer discussion about QAnon and conspiracy theories in this country and what these types of people think and do and believe, and ways to at least have discussion. It's just very depressing. Anyway, back to my, whatever I wanted to talk about for the rest of this video. I can't remember. I recorded this part while I was editing the start of it, and I was like, oh, I should really put in a point about the fact that I did watch the rest of the segment. Yeah, there's a part where Pete Evans cries, and he like gets real emotional about not being able to hug his mum, but he doesn't realize that that's like a problem that we all face right now. Especially, like, there's just a lack of self-awareness, and Liz Hayes being quite smug about all this stuff doesn't help. And anyway, I just wanted to put this extra bit in here just to let you know that I watched the entire interview, and Thanos, has like this whole weird thing about talking about like the message of St. John as well in there.
Remember, I came into the house and my dad sat me down and he said, there's going to be a day in the future that you're going to get told to put a microchip in you. He goes, just listen to my words. When that day comes, don't you dare put that thing in your body.
Do you know where your father got that idea from?
I'm quite sure that it was from something called the Prophecy of St. John that he'd read.
And while I won't go into the full interview because, again, not going to waste your time anymore, the fact that this was the part of the 60 Minutes interview that they uploaded almost straight after the program ended and not the full video, and while it would have been so much better for them to debunk a lot of the bullshit that he's saying and discredit him for this kind of stuff, it's not going to happen. There might be a few rational and reasonable people who will just be like, well, he's ridiculous, and putting all of this package together has shown that. But more often than not, it just boosts these people's ideas. And rather than actually, taking the time to be a journalist and to talk to multiple sources about why these people are wrong and why they're just kind of trying to sum up a very unstable support system more than anything else, is that it's just sad at the end of the day. These people lack so much empathy and that they're willing to believe this conspiratorial bullshit rather than taking the time to research things that are very difficult. I know because I used to be one of those people. In my teenage years, I mentioned Zeitgeist before because I was a 9/11 truther for like 3 years. And it's really depressing to think about like that portion of my life that I wasted that amount of time. But eventually it got to a point where a friend had to sit me down and was like, you do realize that you're making a point about the fact that these people were killed for no reason. Like that's the weird thing about most conspiracy theories, is that it completely removes any kind of empathy or any kind of look at human life in the search for truth. And that these people are willing to believe these wider, more insidious and terrible conspiracies rather than just empathizing with families. Looking at the damage that these conspiracy theories have caused, or looking at things that honestly don't exist or don't matter, rather than taking the time to look within themselves and help people in their community. It's awful. It's terrible that this constantly happens. That I've been online for over 20 years at this point, and these conspiracies don't disappear. They grow and they morph and they become, much like the virus, they evolve. They get worse and worse because people like to share stuff on the internet, and it makes them feel important when they think that they've discovered something new. This isn't anything new. It isn't anything exciting. In fact, this is the same kind of bullshit that surrounded Ebola, or to a lesser extent, the bird flu, or the swine flu. Again, these conspiracies pop up all the time. It's just the fact that this is much more of a global pandemic, because it is a global pandemic. And rather than making things worse, you could be a shining beacon in the community. If you have millions or hundreds of thousands of people listening to you, you could be a force for good. You could use your money and influence to get people together, but not too many people, but get people together and, help them and clothe them and give them masks and help the vulnerable and needy in your community to survive, rather than dividing people and tearing them apart with ridiculous bullshit like this. Anyway, if you want to watch the full thing, you can watch it on 9play or 9 Now or whatever the called. I'm pretty sure they'll upload the entire video at some point, but I wanted to get this point, the start of the actual interview, just make a dumb little video about it, because I just wish people listen to Pete Evans less. And I know that's not going to happen, but at least I can make a stance on it somehow and just be like, well, I thought this guy was bullshit for a long time and that he's just making things worse for everybody. Anyway, if you'd like to subscribe, don't forget to hit that bell. Subscribe down the bottom. I have a very small platform. If you want to support me on Patreon, you can do that right here. It's real great. Here are some wonderful people who have helped out. Shak and has done really good. Dom as well. There's very few people there. Yeah, it's just I appreciate the work. The fact that they keep funding amazing videos like this, super appreciate it. If you want to help out, you can do that. And I'm sorry this is another like 30-minute long video because I guess it's saving you time from listening to Pete Evans. I guess that's a positive. Anyway, I'm Harrison Engstrom, and don't listen to bullshit peddlers like Pete Evans.
And I'll just make this one statement. If I disappear or I have a freaking weird accident, it wasn't an accident, okay? And that's probably the most conspiratorial thing that I will say.